Okay, my name is Alessea and my presentation is about Monsanto herbicide being linked to cancer, possibly. So the herbicide used is called glyphosate, and it's more commonly known as Roundup. Just to give you an idea of how much is actually used, in 1998, 112,000 tons were used worldwide. That's obviously increased a lot. I'll go over a little bit how it's increased in the U.S. later on. This herbicide is used to kill weeds to control the annual and perennial plants so that the crops we eat and stuff don't die. Okay, there's a little chemical structure of glyphosate if you're interested. Okay, so GMOs are genetically modified organisms. Their material has been genetically manipulated, so the DNA and stuff has been changed to something that wouldn't be found in nature. Like that picture there, I don't think that's actually real, but that's the kind of background thing behind it, is that the genes they create are unstable and you wouldn't find them in nature. Like you wouldn't find like a kiwi orange hybrid at the grocery store. So they're engineered to withstand the direct application of the herbicide glyphosate. So over time they've built up a resistance to it because that's what they're specifically engineered to do. So to keep away the weeds and everything, you have to add more of the glyphosate. Originally, it was proposed that GMOs were supposed to be used to increase yield, drought tolerance, and enhance nutrition and stuff, but there haven't actually been any findings that support that that's happened. Okay, so here's a little diagram with some information about GMOs. That kind of goes with what I was saying, like they've done, I guess in a lab, they combined fish DNA with strawberries. So that just kind of shows that like this isn't stuff that would happen in nature. How common it is. There's 30,000 different GMO products on a typical in a typical grocery store. So some of the main plants affected by are soybeans, cotton, and corn over there. Soybeans being 94% with GMOs, cotton 90%, and corn 88%. So this just goes over some of the stuff. I'll mention some of this in later slides also. Another big thing is that it's only been around for about 25 years, so there hasn't been enough long-term testing to conclude whether it is safe. So how other countries react to GMOs. In 60 countries, including the entire European Union, there are significant restrictions or complete bans on the production and sale of GMOs. So in this map, you can see all of the green dots have completely banned GMOs, or at least have significant restrictions, so you can only sell so many, or they have to be labeled and stuff like that. And then in Canada and US, we have no restrictions, so they can sell as much as they want and they don't have to be labeled, so you don't know if what you're buying has GMOs in it. So polls show that 53% of American consumers would not buy food if they knew that it was genetically modified, but right now that you don't have that option. So one of the issues I was saying before is that using the glyphosate has led to more resistant crops, especially corn and soybeans. They're more resistant to it now, so you have to use a lot more to get the same effect. An idea of how much it's increased, Monsanto received permits to increase the use from 6 parts per million to 20 parts per million, which is a really big increase. So that's how much they're using on it now instead of in the past. And since that's just been in the past few years, we're not really sure how that big of an increase is going to affect us. And GMOs are in about 80% of the processed foods that you buy in a supermarket. So here's just a little diagram with some of the most common GMO foods. Like I said before, cotton, corn, and soy are on there. A couple other interesting things. Salmon is on there, which it's not being sold yet, but it's in the process of getting approved by the FDA. So soon it'll be in the stores and nobody's going to know because it's not labeled. So unless if you actually follow it, you're not going to know if what you're eating has GMOs in it. Another thing that's interesting is the Hawaiian papaya is mostly GMOs, but even if you buy the organic ones, it can still be contaminated. So some of the environmental concerns with this is it's been increased 15 times, so like times 15 what it used to be, since GMOs were introduced. So that's just in the US. So that number I used before, 112,000 tons used worldwide. I don't know exactly how much of that was in the US, but whatever it was in the US has been increased 15 times since then. So GMO crops have led to super weeds and super bugs that can only be killed with poison like 2,4-D, which was a major ingredient in Agent Orange. So that's what they're using now to kill these weeds that have become like a result from the glyphosate. And then, like I mentioned before, there haven't been long-term studies on the environmental damage because it hasn't been around that long. Okay, so some of the health concerns to people. One of the studies that was just released, I think, in March, so this is very recent, shows that there's an increased risk for non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. So the International Agency for Research on Cancer claims that Roundup is probably carcinogenic to humans. So this study was done on human exposures, mostly in agriculture workers in the US, Canada, and Sweden. And that was concluded based on 25 years of research on the correlation between Roundup and non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and it shows a positive correlation between the two. There's also been a lot of tests done on animals in laboratories, and they support that there's an increased risk in the laboratory animals. Another recent one from 2014 shows that Roundup, they had a control group and a group of rats that was exposed to Roundup, and the rats that were directly exposed to Roundup had a double incidence of mammary gland tumors. And some other cancer facts. There's a large area in Latin America, I think it's called the Soy Republic. It's, I want to say 125 acres, pretty big. And they're just dedicated to genetically modified soy. And doctors there have documented that there's been an increase in cancer since 1996. There's also some people are saying that they have friends that have been exposed to it because when the area where they're spraying it is so close to where everybody lives. So even if there's just a strong breeze that day, you're going to be getting the glyphosate blown directly into you. So you're directly breathing it in, and they say that they have plenty of friends who have died from cancer, and it's a while, so since 1996, a lot more people have been dying of cancer there. So this is more about the direct influence of glyphosate, so not so much eating the foods, but still we see that it can get into our bloodstream and stuff through the foods also. So also the Agency for Toxic Substances and Disease Registry found that the chance of a child developing brain cancer doubled if either parent was exposed to Roundup during the 2 years prior to birth. So that's also direct exposure and not through foods. But going with that, there have been studies that prove that even though the main gene in glyphosate, we don't have it as humans or animals, so that's why it was originally thought to be safe, but they're finding now that it's kind of transforming your DNA and getting in and just kind of taking over anyway, so that's not really true anymore. So future outlook. With the claims that were made last month, Monsanto is strongly disputing them. They're urging that they re-examine the studies and the findings, so we'll see what happens with that. And then also the Environmental Working Group is calling for the FDA to require labeling of GMO foods that people can at least make an informed decision and decide if they want to support that. Any questions? Yeah.
You know how you had that map showing that the US and Canada are the two only countries that aren't required? Why is that? Why haven't we been forced to show them yet?
I think it's just because Monsanto and stuff they're they kind of control all the food that we get.
Okay.
Yeah, it's more a corporate issue. And they're saying that's the thing that I just said before about them disputing the claims. There's still plenty of studies that are trying to prove that it's safe for us, but other countries have kind of taken the step to ban it because there isn't enough research to prove whether it is safe or not.
Right.